So, welcome to Tuesdays at 2. I am your host, Antoinette LaGrossa. And today we look at probability. Probability tells us how likely something is to happen. Understanding probability helps students in both math and everyday life because it's going to help them better understand and manage risks. So, okay, we know that you are caring, involved parents. Now we want to give you some tools to make probability multi-sensory and fun. This is one of many Tuesdays at 2 that is on the Schiller Learning YouTube channel. So if you like these tips, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on anything. And if you can just give a hello in the chat box, that way that I know that everyone has found it. And then if you do have any questions during the presentation, you can just go ahead and pop those into the chat. Hi. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A. So if there's anything we don't get to during the presentation, um, or that if you have questions completely unrelated to our topic today, hang out at the end and we like to chat about everything and anything. Okay, so multisensory. Multisensory education is really important. It's one of the fundamental ways that Montessori is so successful for students of all abilities, helps to ensure that every student is maximizing and fulfilling their full potential. Um, and it's the same thing with probability. We want to be sure to use a multisensory approach. And what that means for you is you want it to be visual, you want it to be tactile, auditory, and kinesthetic. So getting body movement involved in that. So just keep in mind multisensory. I know we talk about that quite a bit. We do have presentations that go deep into multisensory in each one of those learning styles. But the materials that we're going to be using today, which is basic geometric shapes, dice, and some coins. These are things you probably already have around the house and are going to help make probability fun. Okay, one thing that you may not have, a dedicated probability bag. Schiller Learning, I love the probability bag that we switched to. Oh, it's maybe a few years now, but it is a gorgeous red velveteen bag. It is called the probability bag. The special thing about this bag is that you can't see through it. Ours also has a drawstring, which is nice, but any bag that you have that is not able to be seen through will work for this. This red velveteen probability bag is included with Math Kit 1 for pre-K through third grade. It is also included with the Math Kit 1 basic option. So either one of those will get you that probability bag. But it is, any bag that you're not going to be able to see through. Okay, so why probability? Well, probability is, as we said, an important concept in both math and daily life. And with multisensory exploration, we can teach this to a 4-year-old, I guarantee you. Um, and it's just one of the many examples of how Schiller Learning has that unique multi-sensory teaching approach that breaks, usually complex and abstract concepts down into very concrete experiences that kids are able to understand earlier on. That means they're not going to be intimidated with them if they're, we wait to introduce them to middle school or even later in some math programs. Learning about probability benefits children's cognitive skills by helping them to understand the nature of randomness, to be able to work out possible events in the context of a problem, and to be able to understand correlations, which are crucial for understanding risk. And that is one of the ways that probability can really help kids to make better decisions. Okay, so the way that we introduce probability, and these are actually, some of my favorite activities to do with my own kids. And this is something that we will occasionally pull out and do even when the kids are older. And so with this first, it is that, very basic introduction, and you'll take your opaque bag, your probability bag, and just a single possible outcome. So in this case, we're going to be working with the geometric shapes. So this is one of those wooden circles that comes with Math Kit 1. And so you'll show the bag. Now, when I do this, I like to ham it up and kind of like a magician and show them, here- here's the bag. Is this bag empty? And we're going to show that. Let them, hold the bag, examine it. Um, that's one of the things in Montessori also is giving the students that time and space to really have exploration and understand the materials with which they're working so that we're not making any leaps about their understanding. Okay, so we establish that the bag is empty, and then we're going to take, this is one yellow circle. Again, let the student have it, examine it, and then we're going to put that one yellow circle into the bag, and I'm going to shake it up. In a moment, you may reach in and pull out a shape. What possible shape do you think that can be? Possible color do you think that can be? And then once they've gotten to think about it, discussed things, they can go ahead and pull that out. So you've just introduced certainty. There's only one possible outcome. So, a 4-year-old, even younger kids are going to understand that there's just one possible outcome. So then from there, you can move to two of the same thing. So now we're going to put in two of those yellow circles, draw that, and you can go through the same thing where you show them that, empty bag, and you're taking two yellow circles, putting those into the bag and shaking that up. So I pull out a shape. What possible color could it be? What possible shape could it be? Again, there's only one possibility, even though there are two different shapes in there. Okay. From there, we're going to um, pick it up and start with the experimentation. So you're going to work up the complexity from that certainty stage. Work with two possible outcomes and go from there with, increasing complexity. You can use a variety of materials. You want to, work verbal problem solving and discussion into that. So now, by the way, that possible outcome is the universe in probability. So at this stage, we're not introducing the probability terms. The student is experiencing the probability, doing probability, getting competent in it. And then we are going to later on introduce terms like universe and event. But you've just established right there with the possible outcomes what the universe in the probability that you're doing is. Okay, so now with those two possible shapes, we take one red circle, one yellow circle, put those in the bag, shake those up. And what, if I were to pull one shape out of this bag, what shape could it possibly be? Well, with that, there's still only one possible shape. But now, when we say what possible color can we pull out, there's going to be two possible outcomes. And so, with your set of 64 geometric shapes, you've got 8 different shapes, each in 8 different colors. So you can see that with just your shapes, you have a lot of possible answers. A fun question that is in the Schiller Learning curriculum, one of those in there in book 4, is there are 53 Thursdays this year. What is the probability? Did I just say Thursday? It's Tuesdays. What's the probability that there are 53 Mondays as well? So this is one of those, verbal problem-solving activities where you can step through discussing how to determine what that probability is, because of course the year doesn't always have to start, on a Sunday because maybe the Tuesday is the first day of the year that year. So those kind of questions where it gets the kids really contemplating and exploring. You can get out the calendar, look through that. But all of these activities are designed to be real world experiences and events, things that they're actually doing. It's helping to make that everyday vocabulary associated with probability. And that's where kids sometimes hit a wall with probability. They're introduced to it later on, and they're introduced to the concept and the terminology first. Um, so they're introduced to things like the term universe and probability and explained what they are, and then given exercises to practice those. And so this is doing it in reverse. We give them the actual experiences with probability. And then from there, we're going to transition them gracefully and gradually to the abstract. So if you have started any of the probability activities with your kids, we would love to hear about it in the comments if you want to plug that into the chat. Okay, so one of the other materials that you're going to explore probability with is with the coins. So ShillerLearning has a set of plastic coins. You, of course, can simply use an actual coin for that. And the next step after just that physical exploration with the probability is to begin quantifying the results of that experimentation that you were just doing. Okay. And just like with the physical aspect, when we're beginning to quantify that, taking that next step into abstraction, we're going to start simple here too. Again, you want to make it concrete and build on that understanding that is already there. Uh, so in this case, we would be working with coins. So um, take out a coin, any coin, let's say it were a quarter, show it to the student. Again, always give the student the opportunity to observe and examine the materials with which they're about to start working. And, point out to them, okay, this coin has two sides, and you'll show the head side of the coin and show the tail side, heads, tails. And I'm going to flip this quarter. How can it possibly land? And let the child think about that and tell you. Then you can ask, do you think it will land heads or tails? So let's flip the coin 2 times and write down the results. You may write H for heads and T for tails, and then just have fun with flipping that. Um, if your child has never flipped a coin before, you can go ahead and give that demonstration. Um, and again, you can do it where you're tossing it over onto your hand or just letting it fall on the ground, however, you want your coin toss to go. And, interesting, when I have done this with my fifth child that I've gone through the Schiller Learning curriculum with, um, it has turned out perfect every single time as far as those even odds go. So the first toss, which is exactly what I have there on my slide, is the heads. And then let's toss that again. And look at that, tails. Um, so we record those results. We've got one heads, one tails, and that's a total of two. And then we're going to turn that into an equation. Again, this is really simple charting and writing out an equation. We've got one heads plus one tails, and that equals two of those coin tosses. And then we're going to build from there, get into some more involved event charts. And with these, they will be seeing the population as well as the expected values of the probability. Again, at this stage, we're not introducing those terms. They're just actually working with those things, experiencing them, and becoming competent in them, so that by time we introduce the terms, it is just going to be really easy for them to pick up all of the technicalities of the probability. And that the occurrence of one does not affect the probability or occurrence of another. And a great way of demonstrating event independence is with dice. And again, you're going to take that die and, to show the child this is a die, give it to them. We use a 6-pip die with Schiller Learning, and all that means is that there are up to 6 dots on that die. Okay, and we will let the child examine that and use the Socratic method to lead the student in discovery. So asking them, for instance, how many sides does the die have? Is there a different number of dots on each face of the die? If I throw this die, only one number will show face up. How many different possible numbers could that be? And then give them time to, explore with rolling that and seeing the different numbers that come up until they're like, okay, I'm good with this. Okay. And then we can ask things like, and by the way, all of these questions that I'm asking are in the Schiller Learning curriculum. And you can ask things like, is it possible, if I toss this die 100 times, is it possible that one turns up 100 times? Well, yeah, that's possible, right? Is it likely that one turns up all 100 times? No, that is incredibly unlikely. So is it possible that I get 15 ones? Yeah, that's possible. Is it more likely that I get 15 ones or 100 ones? And so they start to think of those, uh, the likelihood of those outcomes in relation, again, to that physical material with just physically exploring it. They're not, thinking about any technical terms. They're not looking at charts or graphings or probability trees at this point. And so with that, um, they will see that the events are independent without explaining event independence. Of course, that term will come later on. Oh, one thing, if you have not noticed, something interesting about the die is that the opposing faces of a die all add up to 7. So if you haven't noticed that, when you do probability with the kids and you're examining those faces, you can take a look that, okay, 6 is on one side, 7 is opposing. What do they add up to? 4 is on this side, opposing is 3. What do they add up to? And then we've got 2 on this side and 5 on the opposing. And what do they add up to? That's just one of those neat little patterns in math that kids will enjoy. And when they see that kind of pattern on a simple, on dice from a game, they're they get curious and they'll start to look for other math patterns in their environment that they may not have thought about otherwise. Um, so if you haven't discovered that, be sure to explore that with your child as well. That with the multisensory and the Socratic method, you will just see kids' curiosity and thirst for knowledge really light up. Okay, probability put to music. We had, we said multisensory. Of course, one of the auditory ways of exploring a concept is with music. And probability is no different than other concepts. With Schiller Learning, we have songs for probability in both our Math Kit 1 as well as Math Kit 2. The lesson book tells you exactly when to introduce a new song, but just to let you know that those are there and be sure not to miss those. Those are a lot of fun and they help to reinforce defining what probability is and the terminology in it later on. So those songs are going to be really helpful to teach the concept as well as the terminology. And when you put something to music, it is going to be stored in a unique way in the brain. So, even aside from other auditory activities, of course, using the different learning styles, each one is storing information in a different part of the brain. That's why it's so important to include that because, if your child is only learning through one of those learning styles, they're not going to get that same level of understanding as well as storage and retrieval of that information. But music, especially, is really good for that. And of course, it's super fun, and kids love to dance to the songs also. Okay, so the next step toward abstraction is with doing some more charting, getting more involved with that, and using tally marks. So those are going to be really handy when you're recording probabilities of things. Something to always reinforce to the child is that, um, you know, the examples in the books are just examples. Your data is going to vary from that. And, if they repeat that activity again, their data is probably going to vary. Probably not a lot, but it will. Okay. So now let's say we're going to toss a coin 20 times and write down the results with tally marks as follows. And so this is pretty simple. You can see this is a chart you can just jot down on some graph paper, in the ShillerLearning curriculum. It's printed right in the books for the kids to write into. And then they're just going to go through tossing the coin, recording that. And again, the activity includes questions. So, which, again, asking beforehand and then afterwards, asking about the results. So things like, which result happened more. So we just looked at questions that you asked beforehand. Um, and so these are some things that we can ask after. So if we toss a coin 20 times, what would we expect the number of heads to be? What would we expect the number of tails to be? And going into, similar to when we did it with just the chart without the tally marks prior to this. And then you can work in, now that the child is getting a little older, work percentages into your um, probability work, percentages as well as fractions, depending on where the student is at mathematically. And these are activities that are in Math Kit 2. So this again is taking that to, shifting into abstraction and a more complicated probability, and then they'll dive into the terms as well at this point. Again, your data is going to vary. Um, for some kids who are perfectionists, they may want to have their data match up to an example. So that's why it's just important to give that, regular reminder that your data is going to vary. We're just looking at the possibilities within that probability. Okay. And so that was with coins. Of course, there's just two possible outcomes with the coin, that's head or tails. And so from there, you can move up the dice, which is going to, again, have six possible outcomes for that. And then it's the same type of activity. You're going through and rolling that however many times you set for the experiment that you're doing, and record those results. And you can write equations out for those and give percentages of the occurrence of each one of those events, um, the number that you're rolling being the event. Okay. From there, so now you're working with more possible outcomes with your tally marks, and the child is getting good with that. You're going to graduate up to probability trees. So now that we're using a different methodology for recording those results, you want to again start simple. So you could go back to the coin toss where you've got two possible outcomes. So for your probability trees, all you need for these are blank paper and an assortment of colored pencils. And let the kids choose, how they want to color code that for their labels and their events. So you have your event in the square there, and that is the coin flip. And then you've got your outcomes, the heads or the tails. And then you can just record which one of those happens. And here you can see the fractions inserted in there showing that you've got a 1 in 2 chance of it being heads and a 1 in 2 chance of it being tails. And then they can also translate those into percentages. So with probability, you can pull in, depending on where the child is mathematically, other math skills into this. Then once you have the probability tree down, then we're going to, again, just like we did earlier, pair it with charts and transfer that data into the charts. Okay, so that is a quick journey through probability, starting again very concretely with that probability bag. Um, the activities with that are you can have a lot of fun with those. And in addition to the geometric shapes, you can use playing cards. Um, and that's one of the other activities. The materials that ShillerLearning uses for working with probability in Math Kit 2 are playing cards. And of course, you've got 52 possible outcomes there. And so just, have fun with it, introduce it in the concrete, let your child gracefully transition from mastering those concrete experiences to recording that data, working with charts, tally marks, and then probability trees. If you like these tips, be sure to hit the subscribe button